So that they will.
Hello, people. Oh, baby, I should have did something with my hair. Hello. So we are getting into day 2 of the impeachment. Hey, how's everybody doing? I see you, Ketta, Shannon, Melinda Thomas, Karen Elizabeth, Tammy Thurston. Hey, y'all. Hey, I heard, baby, this is going to be very different. Very, very different because I'm hungry. I got to eat. This ain't the live show at night. So we're going to watch this together. Now, I'm not doing a dual video. So if you have it, definitely watch on your own. But we'll talk here. Now, I know some people have said, when we do the live stream that their TV is ahead of mine. It's not that your TV is ahead. What it is as I'm talking right now, there is a delay in transmission. So the words I'm literally saying in this moment, you won't hear until 10 seconds from now. So that's why there ends up being a delay. Like if you're watching along on your TV and then you hear me over here, it's a delay. That's, I just wanted to clear that up because a lot of times people be like, oh, it's a delay. And I'm like, it's really not a delay, but I don't, that's that. So anyway, what can we expect today? We are expecting new video. Hold on, what'd she say?
All persons are commanded to keep silence.
Okay, we're expecting new video. From the impeachment managers. They have 2 days to make their case. Apparently, they're going to be giving us video from Capitol Police that we've not seen. So looks like we're about to. Looks like Chuck Schumer talking. Let's listen.
Now, for the information of all senators, no motions were filed this morning. So we'll proceed to the House manager's presentation. We anticipate 2 10-minute breaks and a 45-minute dinner break around 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Pursuant to the
It's 5 p.m. CST.
Resolution 47. The managers for the House of Representatives have 16 hours to make the presentation of the case. The Senate will now hear you. And we recognize Mr. Manager Raskin to begin the presentation of the case to the House of Representatives. Mr. Raskin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Good morning. Good day. Some people think this trial is a contest of lawyers, or even worse, a competition between political parties. It's neither. It's a moment of truth for America. My late father, Marcus Raskin, once wrote, "Democracy needs a ground to stand upon, and that ground is the truth." America needs the truth about ex-President Trump's role in inciting the insurrection on January 6th because it threatened our government and it disrupted it. It easily could have destroyed the peaceful transfer of power in the United States for the first time in 233 years. Mm-hmm. It was suggested yesterday by President Trump's counsel that this is really like a very bad accident or a natural disaster, where lots of people get injured or killed, and society is just out looking for someone to blame. And that's a natural and normal human reaction, according to the President's counsel, but he says it's totally unfair in this case. President Trump, according to Mr. Castor, is essentially an innocent bystander who got swept up in this catastrophe but did nothing wrong. In this assertion, Mr. Castor unerringly echoes his client, ex-President Trump, who declared after the insurrection that his conduct in the affair was totally appropriate. And therefore, we can only assume he could do and would do the exact same thing again, because he said his conduct was totally appropriate. So now the factual inquiry of the trial is squarely posed for us. The jurisdictional constitutional issue is gone. Whether you were persuaded by the president's constitutional analysis yesterday or not, the Senate voted to reject it. And so the Senate is now properly exercising its jurisdiction and sitting as a court of impeachment, conducting a trial on the facts.
Yeah.
We are having a trial on the facts.
The facts.
The House says ex-President Donald Trump incited a violent insurrection against Congress and the Constitution and the people. The president's lawyers and the president say his conduct was totally appropriate, and he's essentially an innocent victim of circumstances, like the other innocent victims that we'll see getting caught up in all of the violence and chaos. over the next several days. The evidence will be for you to see and hear and digest. The evidence will show you that ex-President Trump was no innocent bystander. The evidence will show that he clearly incited the January 6th insurrection. It will show that Donald Trump surrendered his role as commander-in-chief and became the inciter-in-chief of a dangerous insurrection. And this was, as one of our colleagues put it so cogently on January 6th itself, the greatest betrayal of the presidential oath in the history of the United States. The evidence will show you that he saw it coming and was not remotely surprised by the violence. And when the violence inexorably and inevitably came as predicted and overran this body, in the House of Representatives with chaos, we will show you that he completely abdicated his duty as commander-in-chief to stop the violence and protect the government and protect our officers and protect our people. He violated his oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, the government, and the people of the United States. The evidence will show you that he attempted to descend upon the Capitol to stop the steal, to block Vice President Pence and Congress from finalizing his opponent's election victory over him. It will show that he had been warned that these followers were prepared for a violent attack, targeting us at the Capitol through media reports, law enforcement reports, and even arrests.
Show me someone that.
In short, we will prove that the impeached president was no innocent bystander, whose conduct was totally appropriate and should be a standard for future presidents, but that he incited this attack and he saw it coming. To us, it may have felt like chaos and madness, but there was method in the madness that day. This was an organized attack on the counting of the Electoral College votes in joint session of the United States Congress under the 12th Amendment and under the Electoral Count Act to prevent Vice President Mike Pence and to prevent us from counting sufficient Electoral College votes to certify Joe Biden's victory of 306 to 232 in the Electoral College.
Okay, we watch, just for people that's tuning in, we watching impeachment. Watching impeachment.
In 2016. When my colleague, Mr. Naguse, speaks after me, he will set forth in detail the exact roadmap of all the evidence in the case. My fellow House members and I will then take you through that evidence step by step so everyone can see exactly how these events unfolded. But I want to tell you a few key reasons right now that we know this case is not about blaming an innocent bystander for the horrific violence and harm that took place on January 6th. This is about holding accountable the person singularly responsible for inciting the attack. Let's start with December 12th.
Let's start with December 12th.
See during this trial a man who praised and encouraged and cultivated violence. We have just begun to fight, he says, more than a month after the election has taken place. And that's before the 2nd Million MAGA March, a rally that ended in serious violence and even the burning of a church. And as the president forecast, it was only the beginning. On December 19th,
because he said it was going to be wild.
Before January 6th, he told his base about where the battle would be, that they would fight next. January 6th would be wild, he promised. Be there, we'll be wild, said the President of the United States of America. And that too turned out to be true. You'll see in the days that followed, Donald Trump continued to aggressively promote January 6th to his followers.
He did, yes he
The
did.
event was scheduled at the precise time that Congress would be meeting in joint session to count the Electoral College votes and to finalize the 2020 presidential election. In fact, in the days leading up to the attack, you'll learn that there were countless social media posts, news stories, and most importantly, credible reports from the FBI and Capitol Police that the thousands gathering for the President's Save America March were violent, organized with weapons, and were targeting the Capitol. This mob got organized so openly because, as they would later scream in these halls, and as they posted on forums before the attack, they were sent here by the President. They were invited here by the President of the United States of America. And when they showed up, knowing of these reports that the crowd was angry and it was armed, here's what Donald Trump told them. President Trump whipped the crowd into a frenzy, exhorting followers, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And then he aimed straight at the Capitol, declaring, you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. He told them to fight like hell, and they brought us hell on that day. Incited by President Trump, his mob attacked the Capitol. This assault unfolded live on television before a horrified nation. According to those around him at the time, this is how President Trump reportedly responded to the attack that we saw him incite in public. Delight, enthusiasm, confusion as to why others around him weren't as happy as he was. Trump incited the January 6th attack, and when his mob overran and occupied the Senate and attacked the House and assaulted law enforcement, he watched it on TV like a reality show. He reveled in it. And he did nothing to help us as Commander-in-Chief. Instead, he served as the Inciter-in-Chief, sending tweets that only further incited the rampaging mob. He made statements lauding and sympathizing with the insurrectionists. Over at 4:17 p.m., over 3 hours after the beginning of the siege, for the very first time, he spoke out loud, not on Twitter, spoke out loud to the American people. Here's what he said.
Come on with the video.
I know you're hurt. So you might be saying, all right, the president is going to console us now. He's going to reassure America. He knows our pain. He knows we're hurt. We've just seen these horrific images of officers being impaled and smashed over the head. We've just been under attack for 3 hours. But here's what he actually goes on to say.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side.
So you think he's about to decry the mayhem and violence, the unprecedented spectacle of its mob attack on the U.S. Capitol, but he's still promoting the big lie that was responsible for inflaming and inciting the mob in the first place. If anyone ever had a doubt as to his focus that day, it was not to defend us, it was not to console us, it was to praise and sympathize and commiserate with the rampaging mob. It was to continue to act as inciter-in-chief, not commander-in-chief, by telling the mob that their election had been stolen from them. Even then, after that vicious attack, he continued to spread the big lie. And as everyone here knows, Joe Biden won by more than 7 million votes and 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. But Donald Trump refused to accept his loss even after this attack. And he celebrated the people who violently interfered with the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in American history, and did that at his urging. And when he did, in this video, finally tell them to go home in peace, he added this message. We love you. You're very special. Distinguished members of the Senate, this is a day that will live in disgrace.
Disgrace.
In American history.
Deception.
It is, unless you ask Donald Trump.
Disgrace.
This is what he tweeted before he went to bed that night.
What did he tweet?
At 6:01 p.m.
Happy birthday, Shannon.
not consoling the nation, not reassuring everyone in the government was secure, not a single word that entire day condemning the violent insurrection. That's what he says. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots. In other words, this was all perfectly natural.
Right. And he lying.
To Donald Trump.
And he lying. For those that are just tuning in, baby, we're watching, well, I'm watching the impeachment trial. Cut on your TVs, watch with us. Live commentary throughout here. Live commentary throughout.
Not as a day of disgrace, a day of horror and trauma, as the rest of us remember it, but as a day of celebration, a day of commemoration. And if we let it be, it will be a day of continuation, a call to action, and a rallying cry for the next round of insurrectionary justice, because all of this was totally appropriate. Senators, the stakes of this trial could not be more serious. Every American, young and old and in between, is invited to participate with us in this essential journey to find the facts and share the truth.
Oh, happy birthday to y'all too then.
And no trial is more public or significant than an impeachment trial. Because the insurrection brought shocking violence, bloodshed, and pain to the nation's capital, and we will be showing relevant clips of the mob's attack on police officers and other innocent people, we do urge parents and teachers to exercise close review of what young people are watching here. And please watch along with them if you're allowing them to watch. The impeachment managers will try to give warnings before the most graphic and disturbing violence that took place is shown.
Okay, be careful with your churn. That's what they're saying. Be careful with your churn.
Comprehensive and meticulous presentation will lead to one powerful and irresistible conclusion. Donald Trump committed a massive crime against our Constitution and our people, and the worst violation of the presidential oath of office in the history of the United States of America. For this, he was impeached by the House of Representatives, and he must be convicted by the United States Senate. Before I close, I want to address a constitutional issue still lingering from yesterday's argument. The president obviously is still exploring ways to change the subject and talk about anything other than his responsibility for inciting the attack. We heard a lot yesterday about his claim that this incitement of the insurrection was perfectly appropriate because it's somehow protected by the First Amendment. And this little diversion caught my eye because I've been a professor of constitutional law and the First Amendment for decades. And as we'll demonstrate over the course of the trial, the factual premise and the legal underpinnings of that claim are all wrong. They present President Trump as merely like a guy at a rally expressing a political opinion that we disagree with, and now we're trying to put him in jail for it. That has nothing to do with the reality of these charges or his constitutional offense. The particular political opinions being expressed are not why we impeached the president and have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It makes no difference what the ideological content of the mob was.
Come on, Jamie.
License and forgive incitement to violent insurrection by militant Trump followers this week. You can be sure there will be a whole bunch of new ideological flavors coming soon. As we'll demonstrate with overwhelming evidence, portraying Trump as a guy on the street being punished for his ideas is a false description of his actions, his intent, and the role that
Thank you.
January 6th.
It's the false equivalency for me.
An insurrectionary mob to riot at the Capitol.
Right,
Last
right.
week, 144 constitutional scholars, including Floyd Abrams, a ferocious defender of free speech, Charles Freed, President Reagan's Solicitor General, Stephen Calabrese, the co-founder of the Federalist Society, released a statement calling the president's First Amendment arguments legally frivolous. Adding, we all agree that the First Amendment does not prevent the Senate from convicting President Trump and disqualifying him from holding future office.
Exactly. Come on, Jamie.
No reasonable scholar or jurist could conclude that President Trump had a First Amendment right to incite a violent attack on the seat of the legislative branch, or then to sit back and watch on television as Congress was terrorized and the Capitol sacked. Incitement to violence is, of course, not protected by the First Amendment. That's why most Americans have dismissed Donald Trump's First Amendment rhetoric.
Thank you for the fire thing.
Referring to Justice
Thank you.
Holmes's handy phrase,
Send fire, blaze.
shout fire in a crowded theater. But even that time-honored principle doesn't begin to capture how off-base the argument is. This case is much worse than someone who falsely shouts fire in a crowded theater. It's more like a case.
Ooh, confetti, confetti.
Put out fires sends a mob not to yell fire in a crowded theater, but to actually set the theater on fire. And who then, when the fire alarms go off.
Okay, I'm watching MSNBC for everybody. And if I'm bouncing back and forward, that's because right here, the people I'm looking at, this YouTube, and when I look over here, this TikTok. I don't normally go live on TikTok, but I decided to go live on TikTok today too. So I'm bouncing back and forward. TikTok people, y'all need to come on down here to the YouTube though. Come on down here to the YouTube because we have more funds on the YouTube.
And he says, we're violating his free speech rights just because he's
yeah, Tammy, they told me yesterday. They said like the fire and all that stuff is yeah. I said, now wait a minute. Maybe they over here sending fire and sending celebratory somethings. I don't know. Come on down to the YouTube, the QueJiles show. Come on down to the YouTube.
But if the president spent all of his days doing that, uttering the exact same words, expressing support for the enemies of the United States and for overthrowing the government, is there anyone here who doubts that this would be a violation of his oath of office to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and that he or she could be impeached for doing that?
Right, Jamie, right.
In the United States, you've chosen a side with your oath of office, and if you break it, we can impeach, convict, remove, and disqualify you permanently from holding any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. As Justice Scalia once said, memorably, you can't ride with the cops and root for the robbers.
Oh, can't ride with the cops and root for the robbers.
To the insurrection, you can't expect to be on the payroll as commander-in-chief for the Union. Trump was the president of the United States, and he'd sworn to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. He had an affirmative, binding duty, one that set him apart from everyone else in the country, to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, including all the laws against assaulting federal officers, destroying federal property, violently threatening members of Congress and the vice president, interfering with federal elections, and dozens of other federal laws that are well known to all of you. When he incited insurrection on January 6th, he broke that oath. He violated that duty. And that's why we're here today. And that's why he has no credible constitutional defense. I'll tell you a final sad story in this kaleidoscope of sadness and terror and violence. One of our Capitol officers who defended us that day was a longtime veteran of our force, a brave and honorable public servant who spent several hours battling the mob as part of one of those blue lines defending the Capitol in our democracy. For several hours straight, as the marauders punched and kicked and mauled and spit upon and hit officers with baseball bats and fire extinguishers, cursed the cops, and stormed our Capitol, he defended us, and he lived every minute of his oath of office. And afterwards, overwhelmed by emotion, he broke down in the rotunda. And he cried for 15 minutes. And he shouted out, I got called.
Oh, thank you, Keita. We got some TikTokers here. Oh, the TikTok people came to the YouTube?
And then he recorded,
Y'all come on down to the YouTube. Some of y'all down here?
another black guy in tears just started streaming down my face. And I said,
Welcome.
man, is this America?
Thank you. Okay, TikTokers, come on down to the YouTube. Some of y'all already coming. Thank you. Appreciate baby, we trying to grow the YouTube. We trying to grow the YouTube. Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Ketta, for this super comment. Thank you so much. Hey, Tiki Talkers. She say, yep, we dying here. We dying here.
Is this America?
Come on, Tamara from TikTok. Lady J from TikTok.
A roadmap.
Nicole. Okay. Hey, y'all. Hey, people. Oh, excuse me. Right, Dwayne. Right. Right, Dwayne. Right, Dwayne. Correct. Correct. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, my boy Nagoose. It's time for my boy Nagoose.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, council. Like several of you, I am a child of immigrants. And as a son of immigrants, I believe firmly in my heart that the United States is the greatest republic that this world has ever known.
Oh, all the TikTok people coming. Thank y'all. Hey, TikTok, come on down to the YouTube. It's in my I forget what you call this thing over here, my description. Come on down to the YouTube. Oh, guys. Welcome to the YouTube family. We are a family.
Sadly,
Hey.
we know.
Okay, hold on, wait.
We can no longer take that for granted.
Ashley say she doing both here. She's doing both.
January 6th, the peaceful transition of power was violently.
Thank you, Gianni. Thank you for the super sticker. Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Kathy, thank you for the super sticker, Kathy.
Assembled and incited by the former president of the United States.
Yes, we do. We have fun over here on the on the YouTube.
Because he wanted to stop the transfer of power so that he could retain power, even though he had lost the election. And when the
thank you.
Erupted,
and thank you for the present thing you just sent. Thank you. Okay, let me listen to the Goose. Let me listen to Goose.
He did nothing to stop it. If we are to protect our republic and prevent something like this from ever happening again, he must be convicted.
Convicted.
Now, I want to be very clear about what we will show you during the course of this trial. As my fellow managers present our case to you today, tonight, tomorrow, it'll be helpful to think about President Trump's incitement of insurrection in three distinct parts: the attack, the provocation, the attack, and the harm. Let's start with the provocation. We will show during the course of this trial that this attack was provoked by the president, incited by the president. And as a result, it was predictable and it was foreseeable. And of course, that makes sense. And this mob was well orchestrated. Their conduct was intentional. They did it all in plain sight, proudly, openly, and loudly. Because they believed, they truly believed that they were doing this for him, that this was their patriotic duty. They even predicted that he would protect them. And for the most part, they were right. In his unique role as commander-in-chief of our country, and as the one person that the mob was listening to and following orders from, he had the power to stop it. And he didn't. Now, some have said that President Trump's remarks, his speech on January 6th was just a speech. Well, let me ask you this. When in our
I'll be down.
history
Normally,
as a speech led thousands of people to storm our nation's capital with weapons, to scale the walls, break windows, kill a Capitol police officer.
I can make that work.
This was not just a speech. It didn't just happen.
I will and won't do so. Let me know that.
And as you evaluate the facts that we present to you, it will become clear exactly where that mob came from. Because here's the thing, President Trump's words, as you'll see, on January 6th, in that speech, just like the mob's actions were carefully chosen. Those words had a very specific meaning to that crowd. And how do we know this? Because in the weeks
Jerica. Thank you so much for the super comment, Jerica. Got to get back to work, but we'll be popping in and out. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube. Oh, thank you so much. Come on down to the YouTube, like Sis said. Come on down to the YouTube. Thank you so much, Jerica. Baby, enjoy work because we don't need you to get fired now. We need you to do your job here.
What lead manager Raskin referred to as the big
Hey, Catherine just came from TikTok and she subscribed.
You will hear over and over him using that lie to urge his supporters to never concede and stop the steal.
Let's stop the steal. Wasn't nobody stealing nothing. Y'all tried to steal it. Y'all tried to steal it on January 6th.
Duty to fight like hell. To do what? To stop the steal. To stop the election from being stolen by showing up in this very chamber. To stop you. To stop us. I respectfully ask that you remember those three phrases as you consider the evidence today.
What's your small business, Jerica? Drop info in the chat. What's your small business? Let us know.
On January 6th. Let me show you what I mean. Let's start with the big lie. You will see during this trial that the president realized really by last spring that he could lose. He might lose the election. So what did he do? He started planting the seeds to get some of his supporters ready by saying that he could only lose the election if it was stolen. I mean, in other words, really what he did is create a no-lose scenario. Either he won the election or he would have some angry supporters, not all, but some, who believed that if he lost, the election had to be rigged. And they would be angry because he was telling Americans that their vote had been stolen. And in America, our vote is our voice. So his false claims about election fraud, that was the drumbeat being used to inspire, instigate, and ignite them.
Yeah.
To anger them.
Mm-hmm.
Watch this clip.
Okay, we got a clip.
Because we're not gonna let this election be taken away from us. That's the only way they're gonna win it. We're not gonna let it. It's the only way we can be, it's the only way we can lose, in my opinion, is massive fraud.
We all know what happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
He
Midline.
lost. He lost the election. But remember, he had that no scenario that I referenced earlier.
Yes, join the Patreon too, people. Join the Patreon.
The election was stolen, as he
Well, let me get a link.
And then he told them, your election has been stolen, but you cannot concede. You must stop the steal.
You can't let another person steal that election from you. All over the country, people are together in holding up signs, stop the steal. The Democrats are trying to steal the White House. You cannot let them. You just can't let them.
Now, while he's inciting the supporters, he's also simultaneously
Yes, I was
doing
trying to send a message.
everything he possibly can to overturn the election.
Monthly committee meeting. in
First, he
6 weeks,
begins with the
that
courts,
we
a legitimate
could start
avenue,
first live
legitimate
next week
avenue
on Wednesday.
to challenge the
Is that
election.
okay with you?
But he ignores all of the
Oh, okay,
adverse
okay, yeah,
rulings
that didn't come
when
through, but yeah,
all
that's
of his
totally fine with me.
claims are thrown out. Then he moves on to trying to pressure state election officials to block the election results for his opponent, even though he lost in their states. You'll hear my fellow managers discuss that in detail. Then he tries to threaten state election officials to actually change the votes, to
Mhm.
make him the winner, even threatening criminal penalties
Right.
if they refuse.
That's why they investigating him in Georgia now.
The Justice Department investigated his claims. And even they found no support for those claims. So he tried to persuade some members of his party in Congress to block the certification of his vote with attacks in public forums. When that failed, he tried to intimidate the Vice President of the United States of America to refuse to certify the vote and send it back to the states. None of it worked.
Yeah.
So, what does he do? With his back against the wall, when all else has failed, he turns back to his supporters who he already spent months telling them that the election was stolen. And he amplified it further. He turned it up a notch. He told them that they had to be ready not just to stop the steal, but to fight like hell.
We're to fight for the survival of our nation, and we are going to keep on fighting. We will never surrender, we will only win. Now is not the time to retreat, now is the time to fight harder than ever before. We have to go all the way, and we're gonna fight like hell, I'll tell you right now. We will not bend, we will not break, we will not yield. We will never give in, we will never give up, we will never back down, we will never ever surrender.
You will see that in the months as the president made these statements, people listened.
Mm-hmm.
Armed supporters surrounded election officials' homes. The Secretary of State for Georgia got death threats. Officials warned the president that his rhetoric was dangerous and it was going to result in deadly violence. And that's what makes this so different, because when he saw firsthand the violence that his conduct was creating, he didn't stop it.
Yeah.
He didn't condemn the violence.
He said, I love you.
He incited it further.
Mm-hmm.
And he got more specific. He didn't just tell them to fight like hell. He told them how, where, and when. He made sure they had advance notice, 18 days advance notice. He sent his save the date for January 6th. He told them to march to the Capitol and fight like hell. On January 6th, as Lead Manager Raskin said, the exact same day that we were certifying the election results. What time was that rally scheduled for? The exact same time that this chamber was certifying the election results in joint session. When did he conclude his speech? Literally, Pelosi had gavelled us into session. Many of us were in the House during that joint session of Congress. I was sitting 2 rows behind Leader Schumer and Leader McConnell. I remember it vividly.
That way we can kill
And as we
them
were standing
on
there,
stone and
fulfilling our solemn oath to the Constitution, the president was finishing his speech just a couple of miles away.
Or should we come up with something on our
How did he conclude that infamous speech? With a final call.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I'll text him and I'll ask him and just see like what his schedule's like. You want to use those the photos that you sent me, we'll kind of have him pick out of those.
because the
Or not that you
election
sent me, the
had been
ones that you
stolen.
picked that you like, we'll use those.
And when they heard his speech, they understood his words and what they meant because they had heard it before. Let's take just a minute and really look at his words on January 6th as he spoke at the Save America rally. Now, remember, I told you, you hear three phrases: the election was stolen, stop the steal, and fight like hell. Let's start with that first phrase.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen. There's never been anything like this. It's a pure theft in American history. Everybody knows it. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country.
Now, of course, each of you heard those words before. So had the crowd. The president had spent months telling his supporters that the election had been stolen, and he used this speech to incite them further, to inflame them, to stop the steal, to stop the certification of the election results.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We must stop the steal.
Finally, the president used this speech as a call to arms. It was not rhetorical. Some of his supporters had been primed for this over many months. As you'll learn, days before this speech, as lead manager Raskin noted, there were vast reports across all major media outlets that thousands of people would be armed, that they'd be violent. You'll learn that Capitol Police and the FBI reported in the days leading up to the attack that thousands in the crowd would be targeting the Capitol specifically, that they had arrested people with guns the night before the attack on weapons charges. And this is what our commander-in-chief said to the crowd in the face of those warnings right before they came here.
We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. And you have to get your people to fight, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
You have to get your people to fight.
Can I just say, I don't know what it is with YouTube camera, but TikTok camera, baby, these coils just come through so clear on the camera. I said, now wait a minute, because TikTok got me over here looking rough, but the coils, yes. But TikTok, come on down to the YouTube. Everybody on the YouTube, we having a good time on the YouTube. We talking, we in the comments, chitting and chatting. Come on down to the YouTube.
He incited it. It was foreseeable.
Send a shout out to my class. They are watching and enjoying you. Also, thanks for the unsung videos making lesson plans easier this month. Okay, well, hold on now. I ain't know the children was watching right now. I thought they was in school. Let me make sure that thing covered up tight. Hey, churn in Katrina Moore class. Thank you so much for the super comment. Hey, churn. And I hope y'all are enjoying the unsung videos for Black History. Thank you.
So when he makes statements, he knows who he's talking to, he knows what he wants them to do. And the fact that he said the things he's been saying, the things he's been saying since the election, and encouraging people, no surprise again with what happened yesterday.
No surprise. Think about that, no surprise. The president had every reason to know that this would happen because he assembled the mob, he summoned the mob, and he incited the mob. He knew when he took that podium on that fateful morning that those in attendance had heeded his words and they were waiting for his orders to begin fighting. And that, of course, brings me, my fellow managers, to what happened here in this building. As lead manager Raskin stated, my colleagues are going to walk through the events of January 6th and the evidence in very great detail. They are painful to watch and to recount, and I'm not going to repeat the evidence now, but I do want to be clear about what also happened during that terrible attack, and that is this, that President Trump once again failed us. Because when the violence erupted, when we and the law enforcement officials protecting us, protecting you, were under attack, as each of you were being evacuated from this chamber from a violent mob, as we were being evacuated from the House, he could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. It was his duty as commander-in-chief to stop the violence. And he alone had that power. Not just because of his unique role as commander-in-chief, but because they believed that they were following his orders. They said so.
All in the Capitol.
I was following my president. I thought I was
Hey,
what we were.
welcome from TikTok.
President Trump requested that we be in DC on the 6th.
You heard it from them. They were doing what he wanted them to do. They wouldn't have listened to you, to me, to the vice president of the United States who they were attacking. They didn't stop in the face of law enforcement, police officers fighting for their lives to stop them. They were following the president. He alone, our commander-in-chief, had the power to stop it. And he didn't. You will hear evidence tonight, tomorrow, throughout the trial, about his refusal as commander-in-chief to respond to numerous desperate pleas on the phone, across social media, begging him to stop the attack. And you will see his relentless attack on Vice President Pence, who was at that very moment hiding with his family as armed extremists were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," calling him a traitor. You will see that even when he did finally, 3.5 hours into the attack, tell these people to go home in peace, he added, as lead manager Raskin said, I'll quote, "You're very special. We love you." Think for a moment, just a moment, of the lives lost that day, of the more than 140 wounded police officers, and ask yourself if as soon as this had started, President Trump had simply gone onto TV, just logged onto Twitter and said, "Stop the attack." If he had done so with even half as much force as he said, "Stop the steal," how many lives would we have saved? Sadly, he didn't do that. At the end of the day, the president was not successful in stopping the certification. That we know, thanks to the bravery of our law enforcement and to the bravery of the senators in this room. Each of you who still fulfilled your constitutional duty even under the threat of mortal peril. But there can be no doubt of the grave harm that he caused to our elected leaders, to us, our families, to all who work in the Capitol, our staff, your staff, to our brave Capitol Police who defend us tirelessly with little thanks, who believed that they had a commander-in-chief who would defend and protect them and instead put them in harm's way, to those killed for heeding his command, to our democracy and the system which ensures that we have a president elected by the people, to our national security and our standing in the world. The harm was real. The damage was real. 5 people lost their lives on that terrible, tragic day. A woman was shot dead 50 feet from where we later certified the election results. And for those who question just how bad it was, criminal complaints recently unsealed by the Department of Justice are more than revealing. You'll see one of these documents on the screen. In the charging affidavit of one of the leaders of the Proud Boys, we learned that members of this group said, I'm going to quote, they would have killed Mike Pence if given the chance. In another, we learned of a tweet in real time while they were in the building stating, we broke into the Capitol. We got inside. We did our part. We were looking for Nancy Pelosi to shoot her in the frickin' brain, but we didn't find her.
Thank you.
And for anyone who suggests otherwise, these defendants themselves have told you exactly why they were here. You'll see this in the trial. That in the halls of the Capitol, on social media, in news interviews, and in charging documents, they confirm they were following the president's orders. You can see some of the statements on that screen. One who said, Trump wants all able-bodied patriots. Another, that President Trump is calling us to fight. This isn't a joke. Another one, I thought I was following my president. I thought I was following what we were called to do. Our president wants us here. We wait and take orders from the president. He made them believe over many weeks that the election was stolen and they were following his command to take back their country. As I prepared for today, yesterday, this trial, there's one memory that I couldn't shake. Which was on the night of January 6th, and the feeling of walking back onto the House floor and seeing many of you there. I remember us finishing our task at 4 a.m. And as I walked off the floor, I was so grateful for the opportunity to thank the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, for his actions, for standing before us and asking us to follow our oath and our faith and our duty. We only had a couple of hours of sleep that morning. Early the next day, I called my dad, who came to this country, as I mentioned, as an immigrant 40 years ago. And I told him that the proudest moment by far of serving in Congress for me was going back onto the floor with each of you to finish the work that we had started. I'm humbled to be back with you today. And just as on January 6th, when we overcame that attack on our capital, on our country, I'm hopeful that at this trial, we can use our resolve and our resilience to again uphold our democracy. by faithfully applying the law, vindicating the Constitution,
Hey,
and
daughter.
holding President Trump accountable.
Hey, daughter. Tell her get back to that schoolwork soon, though. People on TikTok, baby, come on down here. We on YouTube. Come on down here. We on YouTube. Hey, TikTok people, but we down here on the YouTube. Yeah, Nagos did that. Nagos did a real good job. Nagos did a real good job.
Representatives Joaquin Castro and Eric Swalwell will now show the evidence of President Trump's long campaign
Child, not Swalwell.
to legitimize his electoral defeat and to galvanize his supporters to help him retain his power at any cost. So we're going to go at this point step by step and explain the progression all the way up until the attack.
Who finna come? Joaquin first or Swalwell? Okay, Joaquin Castro. Joaquin Castro finna come up.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Joaquin Castro, and I represent San Antonio in the United States Congress.
Okay. Hey, both of your daughters. Shara Thompson. Hey to both of your daughters.
Chance to put on its shoes.
All right, children, make sure you get that schoolwork done. Wait, first, hold up, because this ain't that kind of show. Make sure you get that schoolwork done. We're going to watch this impeachment for a little while, but you got to get that schoolwork done too here.
When that lie is told by the most powerful person on earth, our commander-in-chief.
Thank you for that super sticker. Thank you. I appreciate that.
This attack.
Oh, here we go. Thank you for the super comment. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The evidence shows clearly that this mob was provoked over many months by Donald J. Trump. And if you look at the evidence, his purposeful conduct, you'll see that the attack was foreseeable and preventable. I'll start by discussing President Trump's actions leading up to the election, when he set up his big lie. Beginning in the spring of 2020, President Trump began to fall behind in the polls. And by July, President Trump had reached a new low. He was running 15 points behind his opponent. And he was scared. He began to believe that he could legitimately lose the election. And so he did something entirely unprecedented in the history of our nation. He refused to commit to a peaceful transition of power. Here's what he said.
Can you give him a direct answer? You will accept the
I
election?
have to see. Look, I have to see, Joe. I'm not going to just say yes. I'm not going to say no. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful plan?
You don't want to get rid of the ballots and you'll have a very peaceful, there won't be a transfer, frankly, there'll be a continuation.
Senators, the President of the United States said, quote, "There won't be a transition of power. There'll be a continuation." President Trump was given every opportunity to tell his supporters, yes, if I lose, I will peacefully transfer power to the next president. Instead, he told his supporters the only way he could lose the election is if it was stolen. In tweet after tweet, he made sweeping allegations about election fraud that couldn't possibly be true. But that was the point. He didn't care if the claims were true. He wanted to make sure that his supporters were angry, like the election was being ripped away from them. On May 24th, 6 months before the election, he tweeted, "It will be the greatest rigged election in history." How could he possibly know it would be the greatest rigged election in history 6 months before the election happened? And on June 22nd, more of the same. Rigged 2020 election. It will be the scandal of our times. Again, about an election that had not even happened. On July 30th, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. Again, just big words with nothing to prove them. But he wanted to make his supporters believe that an election victory would be stolen from him and from them. And this was to rile up his base, to make them angry. Now, these were just a few of the many times President Trump tweeted about this. And he did it in speeches, rallies, and in television too.
This is going to be the greatest election disaster in history. Because the only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that.
The only way they can take this election away from us is if this is a rigged election. We're going to win this election.
It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
This will be one of the greatest fraudulent and most fraudulent elections ever.
He probably won't be, but
This is clear.
I don't know if I can say what should happen, but there are a lot of possibilities.
The possibility or the reality.
There can be criminal charges.
And there are dozens more tweets.
Yeah, there can be criminal charges, but the Senate, if they don't convict him, then the Senate is basically, I mean, they're done on their part. Thank you for the comment.
They firmly believe that if he lost, it was because the election was rigged.
This is what I think too. New York and Georgia, they waiting on this to be done.
Under any circumstance? No. Why is that? Because it's lies and deceit and corruption.
Do you think that if we get to election night or in the following days, if Biden winds up somehow becoming the winner, do you think it's rigged?
Oh, yes. Very much so.
Election night? Yes. Days after. If it shows up as Joe Biden won? Yes. In your opinion, would that be the only way that Trump could lose and it'd be a rigged election? Is it the only way Joe Biden could win?
Absolutely. I agree with that. Because there's no way all presidents going to lose. But yes, there would be a rigged election. There's some type of cheating went on, what have you. And I firmly believe that.
Now, all of us in this room have run for election. And it's no fun to lose. I'm a Texas Democrat. We've lost a few elections over the years. But can you imagine telling your supporters that the only way you could possibly lose is if an American election was rigged and stolen from you? And ask yourself whether you've ever seen anyone at any level of government make the same claim about their own election. But that's exactly what President Trump did. He truly made his base believe that the only way he could lose was if
they rigged
the
it.
election was rigged. And senators, all of us know, and all of us understand how dangerous that is for our country. Because the most combustible thing you can do in a democracy is convince people that an election doesn't count, that their voice and their vote don't count, and that it's all been stolen. Especially if what you're saying are lies. Let us turn now to the election. As you know, the results were not fully reported on election night, which is not unusual in our nation's history. But by November 7th, major news networks, including Fox News, reported that once the remaining votes were counted, Joe Biden would be the likely victor. So President Trump began urging his supporters to stop the count. I would imagine that if we went around this room, there are folks sitting here that started down on election night and ended up coming back up and winning their races. Perhaps that's why some of you are seated in this room today. But imagine if you were behind and the results start coming in, and as you started pulling ahead, your opponent said, "That's not fair. Stop the count while I'm still ahead." That's what Donald Trump did.
Right. It was so childish.
But that's not how America works.
Correct.
Here, every vote counts. You don't just
Here,
start counting
right matters. Word to Alexander Vindman.
every vote. And let's be clear. President Trump knew that you can't just stop counting votes, but he wanted to inflame his base. There was a purpose behind this, to truly make them believe that counting votes would result in a stolen, rigged election. He said at 12:49 a.m. on election night, quote, "They're trying to steal the election. We will never let them do it." A little over an hour later, at roughly 2:30 in the morning, before all the votes were even close to being counted,
he came, I think,
even further,
he claimed
and
victory.
actually declares victory.
Right. I remember that.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Frankly, we did win.
I'm so glad he gone.
Rather than calmly saying, let's count the votes. If there's legal issues, we'll go to court and we'll resolve them. Instead, he told his supporters that he actually won the election and the whole thing was a fraud. He said that on November 4th, and he has never recounted that statement since. Despite President Trump's pressure at the time, election officials around the country continued to carry out their duties. And as votes were counted and his loss became more certain, he riled up his base further. Take a look at these tweets. On November 5th, he tweeted in all capital letters, as if shouting commands, quote, "Stop the count. Stop the fraud." Senators, this is dangerous. I also want you to remember these tweets for another reason. Because that's what it looks like when Donald Trump wants people to stop doing something. And bear in mind, this is not the president saying to his supporters that somebody stole your cup of coffee. This is the commander-in-chief telling his supporters, your election is being stolen and you must stop the counting.
Oh, whose birthday is it? Happy birthday.
And it worked. His words became their actions. His commands.
Okay, happy birthday, y'all.
Their actions. Take a look at this. The same day as those tweets, around 100 Trump supporters showed up in front of the Maricopa County Election Center in Phoenix, some of them carrying rifles, literally trying to intimidate officials to stop the count, just as President Trump had commanded. Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs said that protesters were, quote, causing delay and disruption and preventing those employees from doing their job. Let's call this what it was. We're facing a global pandemic. Workers were risking their health to ensure the integrity of our elections. And President Trump's supporters were encircling them, trying to prevent them from doing their own jobs. This was dangerous, it was scary, and it was a blatant act of political intimidation. In Philadelphia, that same day, police investigated an alleged plot to attack the city's Pennsylvania Convention Center, where votes were being counted. Police took at least one man into custody who was carrying a weapon. And this happened all over. In Atlanta, in Detroit, and in Milwaukee. His supporters used armed force to try to disrupt lawful counting of votes because they bought into Trump's big lie that the election was stolen from them. President Trump's months of inflaming and inciting his supporters had worked. They believed it was their duty to quite literally fight to stop the count. So they showed up at election centers across the country to do just that.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
That was just ridiculous. That was absolutely ridiculous. I forgot them people did that.
We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret.
And there it is. They bought into his big lie. President Trump told his supporters over and over again, nearly every day, in dozens of tweets, speeches, and rallies, that their most precious right in our democracy, their voice, their vote, was being stripped away, and they had to fight to stop that. And they believed him, and so they fought. And you may say, well, he didn't know that they'd take up arms.
They've been taking up
But
arms.
when he did know, when it was all over the news, President Trump didn't stop. As Mr. Swalwell will show, after Donald Trump lost, he became even more desperate and incited his base even further. He urged them again and again, with increasingly forceful language, to fight to stop the steal. And even as the certification got closer, and he grew even more desperate, he gave them specific instructions on how, where, and when to fight to stop the steal. He told them to show up on January 6th and march to the US Capitol to stop the certification of the election results.
Yeah.
And
That's what he
told
did.
them to come here and fight like hell. You will see clearly that this violent mob that showed up here on January 6th didn't come out of thin air. President Donald John Trump incited this violence. And that's the truth.
That was good, Castro. That was good. Come on, Eric Swalwell. Come on up here. What you finna say? I need to take a little break.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Eric Swalwell, and I represent California's 15th Congressional District.
Okay, let me cut this down. All right. Let me say this real quick. TikTokers, in my description, there is the info to my YouTube. I'm going to ask y'all to come on down to the YouTube, but I'm saying to everybody right now, I have to hop off. I have an appointment I got to go to. I still will be streaming this, but I won't be able to stream and talk at the same time. So give me a couple hours. This is going to be going on all day. We'll come back. We'll continue the live stream. I am still doing the live show tonight at 8:30 p.m. CST, but that's down here on the YouTube where we recap. We do it Monday through Friday for the TikTok people. We recap what happened of the day. So we will recap today's events at 8:30 p.m. CST. But I would invite everybody from TikTok to come on down to the YouTube, subscribe, and cut on your post notifications so you could be a part of that show. So I will be back in a few hours. I'll be back in a few hours where we'll stream again, just if they're still talking, and we'll still do the separate live show tonight where we break down more analysis after we get everything in. Okay. So thank y'all so much for streaming so far. I appreciate it. I will see you all later.